All right, welcome to another deep dive. This time, we're going to be looking at the world of Harry Potter,
Nice.
but not in the way that, you might think.
Yeah.
So, we're not going to be talking about, which house we're in or, Quidditch, all
Right.
that fun stuff.
Yeah.
This time, we're actually going to be looking at some of the listener questions that you sent in. A lot of you had really interesting questions about this one philosophical theme that seems to kind of run throughout the Harry Potter books.
Hmm.
And is this idea of like humanity's quest to conquer death.
Right.
And so specifically, two magical objects that we want to look at today. One is the Philosopher's Stone,
Yes.
and the other is the Deathly Hallows.
Hmm.
And so we're going to be looking at, are these objects as different as they seem,
Right.
or are they really just two sides of the same coin?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Right.
I think a lot of times people kind of get, caught up in the sort of the fantastical elements of these objects. And I think maybe sometimes we miss some of the deeper meanings behind them.
Yeah.
And I think, really they offer a fascinating kind of exploration of our relationship with mortality.
Okay, so let's start with the Philosopher's Stone.
Okay.
I mean, this is the thing that grants literal immortality.
Right.
It creates the Elixir of Life, which basically, you don't age.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to die from natural causes.
Right.
I mean, who hasn't wished for that at some point?
Yeah, it's a very, kind of alluring concept.
Right.
And certainly the allure of immortality has been something that's been around, through history and across cultures and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I think what's interesting in the Harry Potter books is that this idea of the quest for immortality, it's treated with a lot of caution.
Mm-hmm.
We have to think about Voldemort, right? I mean, his obsession with the Philosopher's Stone,
Yeah.
ultimately leads to his downfall.
Right.
And it seems like this yearning for eternal life really twisted him.
Yeah, he wasn't always a bad guy, though.
Right.
Right. Like he was like when he was a kid, he's like this really gifted,
Super talented.
yeah, talented kid, right?
Yeah.
But it's like that fear of death, that that desperation to avoid it. It's like it just warped his ambition.
Mm-hmm.
Like he was so focused on conquering death
Yeah.
that he kind of like forgot what it meant to actually live.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Voldemort's story is a really powerful example of how this obsession with avoiding death
Yeah.
can lead to, a real disconnect from things like compassion and empathy and human values.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sort of a cautionary tale about how the relentless pursuit of power, especially power over death, can actually corrupt even the most, brilliant minds,
Yeah.
like he was.
Okay, so then we have the Deathly Hallows, which
Yeah.
are shrouded in this like mystery and legend.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
We have the Elder Wand, which is supposed to be the most powerful wand in existence.
Yes.
We have the Resurrection Stone, which can bring back the dead. And then, of course, we have the Invisibility Cloak.
Yeah.
And they say that together, if you have all three of them, then you become the Master of Death.
The Master of Death.
But what does that even mean?
Yeah, what does that mean?
It's not like they give you immortality in the same way that the Philosopher's Stone does.
Right. And this is where things get really interesting.
Yeah.
You mentioned, the symbol of the Deathly Hallows, the circle and the triangle and the line.
Right.
Did you know that that actually bears a resemblance to alchemical symbols?
Oh, really?
Yeah. And some of those alchemical symbols are associated with, get this, the Philosopher's Stone.
Whoa. So there could be a link between the two.
Potentially.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Can you maybe talk a little bit more about how that connection, how that could like deepen our understanding of both the Hallows and the Stone?
Well, I think it suggests that despite their apparent differences on the surface,
Yeah.
that maybe these objects are more intertwined than we initially realize. Like maybe they are two sides of the same coin, right?
That's okay.
Each representing, a different approach to this same fundamental human desire to transcend death.
Okay.
But I think, while the stone aims to kind of directly conquer death, the Hallows seem to offer an alternative path, one that's more focused on accepting and understanding death rather than outright, defeating it.
So you're saying the Hallows are not about escaping death, but more about coming to terms with it.
I think so.
Like if the Philosopher's Stone is about like clinging to life no matter the cost,
Mm-hmm.
are the Deathly Hallows about like letting go.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Wow.
I mean, the Hallows don't shy away from the concept of death at all.
Yeah.
In fact, they acknowledge it.
Right.
They even provide a way to kind of interact with it.
Right.
But ultimately, I think they guide you towards this place of acceptance.
Okay, so I'm starting to see the distinction here, but can you give us some examples from the story?
Sure.
To make this really clear.
Yeah, let's look at the Resurrection Stone, for example.
Okay.
So it allows communication with the deceased, right?
Right.
But as Harry discovers, it's a very painful experience.
Yeah.
And it really reinforces the idea that death is, a natural and integral part of life.
Right.
And then we have the invisibility cloak.
Right.
It helps you to hide.
Yeah.
But it can't ultimately stop death forever.
Right.
And even the Elder Wand,
Yeah.
despite its immense power, it doesn't make its owner immortal.
Right. Yeah, like Dumbledore.
Dumbledore, Grindelwald, Voldemort,
Yeah.
they all met their end.
Yeah.
Despite wielding that power.
Right, so it's not like even with the Elder Wand, you can't escape death.
Right.
So it seems like this idea of being the master of death isn't about living forever at all.
I don't think so.
But then what does it mean?
Well, if we look at the story of the Peverell brothers,
Right.
the alleged, original owners of the Hallows,
Yeah.
and we look at Harry's own journey, I think a different kind of mastery emerges.
Right.
And this true master of death, it's not someone who seeks to cheat death,
Right.
but someone who seeks to face it with courage and acceptance.
Okay.
And really embracing, the fullness of life while also acknowledging its inevitable end.
Oh, okay.
So it's not about defying death, but about understanding its place in the grand scheme of things.
Exactly.
Wow, that's...
It's a powerful concept.
Yeah, it's a really powerful concept.
Yeah.
So it's more about, accepting it as part of, the natural cycle of life.
Right.
Instead of just being terrified by it.
Yeah. And I think the Philosopher's Stone offers, that fantasy of completely escaping death.
Mm-hmm.
But the Deathly Hallows present this much more nuanced perspective.
Right.
Where true mastery isn't about denying death, but it's about learning to live with it and even embrace it.
It's almost like they're two different, paths
Yeah.
with the same destination, but with different approaches.
Right. One's about clinging to life no matter what. The other's about, letting go.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
I mean, the Deathly Hallows don't try and shy away from the concept of death.
Yeah.
They acknowledge it. They even provide a way to interact with it.
Right.
But ultimately, I think they lead you toward this place of acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like Rowling saying, yes, death is a part of life, but it doesn't have to be something that we fear.
Right.
We can choose to face it with courage and understanding.
And it's amazing how these, magical objects
Right.
can bring up all these really deep philosophical discussions.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what I think is so cool is, how she did it,
Mhm.
It's not like she's,
Yeah.
hitting you over the head with this stuff.
Right.
But it's all there if you,
Yeah.
pay attention.
Yeah, it's really, that's the brilliance of her writing, I think, is that she's able to tackle these really, complex kind of existential questions in a way that's really engaging and thought-provoking.
Right.
And especially, for, younger readers. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like an invitation to think deeper,
Yeah.
to consider these different perspectives
Right.
and to question, your own assumptions about life and death and all that.
It makes you think, yeah.
Yeah.
So if we were to, sum up everything that we've discussed today,
Mhm.
what would you say is, the main takeaway here?
Well, I think the main point is that the Philosopher's Stone and the Deathly Hallows offer these two very contrasting perspectives
Yeah.
on humanity's kind of age-old struggle with mortality.
Right.
The stone embodies, this primal desire to cheat death and cling to life
Right.
at any cost.
At any cost, yeah.
But the Hallows offer, I think, a much more nuanced
Yeah.
and maybe even a more mature understanding of death.
Right.
Where true mastery lies not in escaping death, but accepting it as a natural part of life.
And that by facing death with, courage and understanding,
Mm-hmm.
we can truly live a life, free from fear.
Yes.
That-
It's incredibly profound.
Yeah.
And it's a message that I think really resonates, even outside of this magical world of Harry Potter.
Right.
I mean, these are ideas that apply to all of our lives, even if we don't have, wands and spells and stuff.
Right. It's about how we, view our own mortality.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so I have to ask you,
Yeah.
if you had to choose between the two,
Okay.
the Philosopher's Stone or the Deathly Hallows,
Oh, man.
which one would you pick?
That is a fantastic question.
Right.
And it's one that I think requires careful consideration,
Yeah.
and it really pushes you to examine your own,
Yeah.
values and beliefs about life and death. And
It's not an easy choice.
yeah, it's not an easy choice at all.
Right. Because, like, on one hand, who wouldn't want to live forever?
Right.
Right.
But then again, maybe there's more to life than just trying to, avoid the inevitable.
Right.
Yeah.
So the Philosopher's Stone might offer a very,
Mhm.
tempting escape from mortality.
Right.
But the Deathly Hallows suggest a path toward this deeper understanding of what it means to be human,
Okay.
to embrace life in all its fullness, including its end.
Whoa. That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot to unpack there.
It is.
It makes you think about, what's really important.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, the beauty of this whole exploration
Yeah.
is it's not about finding, the right answer.
Right.
It's about engaging with these ideas and seeing how they resonate with our own, experiences and beliefs.
You've definitely given us a lot to think about.
Yeah.
But before we wrap up, I want to turn it back to our listener,
All right.
So if you were facing that choice,
Yeah.
the Philosopher's Stone
Mm-hmm.
or the Deathly Hallows,
Right.
what would you pick?
Yeah. Which path would you choose?
Yeah. And what would that say about, like, how you view
Mm-hmm.
life and death?
Right.
It's a big question.
Right.
It is. It's a really, thought-provoking question.
Yeah.
And I think, there is no right or wrong answer.
Right.
But it's really about, what do these objects and the choices that they represent,
Yeah.
what do they tell us about our own relationship with mortality?
Yeah. And I think what's been so cool about this deep dive is that it's not just about, like, magic and fantasy.
Yeah.
It's about, these bigger questions
Right.
that we've all thought about.
Mm.
I mean, like, pretty much everyone has thought about, like,
Yeah.
what happens after we die?
Absolutely.
And I think, Rowling's just so smart
Mhm.
for, like, weaving these, like,
Yeah.
philosophical themes into
Yeah.
this story.
It's brilliantly done.
Yeah.
And it really encourages us to think critically
Yeah.
and question our assumptions
Yeah.
and really confront, our own hopes and fears around these big issues.
So I guess, like, to kind of wrap up
Yeah.
our deep dive on the Philosopher's Stone and the Deathly Hallows, we want to leave you with this. Do you want to live forever?
Mm-hmm.
Or do you want to, make the most of the time that you have?
Right.
Maybe the real magic isn't about, like, living forever,
Yeah.
but about, like, fully embracing life,
Mm-hmm.
the
Yeah.
good and the bad.
Yeah. With all of its, joys and sorrows and
Yeah.
its triumphs and its endings.
Yeah. And thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Yes. Thank you so much for listening.
We hope you enjoyed it.
We hope it sparks some interesting thoughts.
Yeah.
And maybe a deeper appreciation for the
Yeah.
complex themes
Yeah, the complexity.
that are in the Harry Potter books.
Yeah. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning,
Yes.
and keep the magic of curiosity alive.
Absolutely.